What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is happening, my people? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. Here's the game plan. Today will be a college football show. We will have my guy, Intern Jackson, from the heart of Old Town Scottsdale join us. He has a bunch of questions prepared, and we'll talk a little ball, a little college football. The playoffs are set. Rumors of Bill Belichick. Well, his name's William, but he goes by Bill Belichick, joining North Carolina. Was a report out there today that he signed, obviously, until Adam Schefter or Rap Sheet or one of those guys come in off the top rope. We can't confirm yet, but it's definitely a real possibility. So we'll discuss that. Maybe by the time you're listening, he's officially the coach. I'm a little reluctant to think it's going to happen this week, but who knows? I mean, that's the crazy part about these situations. You never know. The game plan for tomorrow's show, we will get ready for the Niners-Rams game, which is a big Thursday night game. We will react to anything, get a little vibe update from a little team in Philadelphia. Sirianni will talk. We'll see what's going on there in Philly, which has a big game against the Steelers, and talk some NFL football, as well as we'll do a big mailbag. You guys know the drill, at John Middlekauff, firing those DMs. We'll do a big mailbag for Thursday as well. But today, college football only. A lot going on in the college football world, and that will be the game plan today. So other than that, yeah, not much else to say. You guys know I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. If you guys want to go to a game, if you guys want to go to a concert, if you guys want to do something fun, holidays right around the corner. Get your friends, get your family a gift, get them a pair of tickets to a concert, to a game, and do it with my friends at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code JOHN, that's JOHN, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, back at it again with what many are saying is just a national hit in Jackson from Old Town Scottsdale. Just bringing the heat, bringing the energy, bringing the fun. Jackson, how you doing, bro?
I'm good. You know what's funny is I actually got a DM from someone from South Africa who's a viewer of your show, and they were saying every 2 weeks or so, like, update us on your love life. And I told them, I was like, I don't know if we're gonna get any type of big updates in 2 weeks. It might have to be like a 2 month update because the rate we're going at, I don't think much is gonna change within 2 weeks. But no, it's great to be here, man. So much going on in college football for sure.
You on the apps?
I don't know. See, for me, my thing is, I don't know if it's my algorithm or maybe my photos that I click, and no offense to those out there, I just get a bunch of ugly girls. I don't really get the blondes that I'm looking for. And I just kind of stay off of those apps. It's kind of tough to like get the algorithm back on your side. And I don't get much action on those apps too. I'd rather have, whether you recommend me somebody or someone else out there recommends somebody, I want to meet them face to face first before, we get further on. But
yeah, the apps, I think I read or heard, haven't been on in a long time, that they're kind of a dying thing. I would imagine like TikTok and Instagram and stuff, like the DMs are really where a lot of the action happens. So, work those DMs. That's how I got a fiance, in the DMs. So the DMs are powerful.
What was the line? What was the one liner that you used?
I wanted to see a house. She was a real estate agent, so I took her around. Now, she had a boyfriend at the time. But then I had her show me houses that were double my price, out of my price range. So, I was like, damn, this guy's doing pretty well. And then, you just keep contact. You just keep, liking some stories and stuff. And you kind of, swim around like a shark on the outside. And then when you get some clues, like, oh, it looks like she's single. And then you pounce, like you said, with the apps, it's out of your control. And let's face it, in that situation, I've always said, like, if you get me in a one-on-one situation, at a bar, at a restaurant, like on a date, I can outkick my coverage all day long. But if you get me in the app setting where it's like a picture of this bald guy, it's like, what's this guy's deal? He's a podcaster? Like, I got no fucking chance, because you get these douchebag losers, but they're good looking. And they're just going to get swiped the right way. So it's an uphill battle if you're not like 8.5 plus, those guys, you don't need anything going for you. But if you got the looks, the apps are very conducive to dominating.
Yeah,
It's like
what
the
I
Louis
lack.
C.K. had a line like the tall guy walks into a bar and basically just announces, "I'm here for the sex." That's essentially like the apps are just there for good looking people. Though, personality really shines once you get them in that setting. But the hardest part is just to get the date.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, what I lack in height, shredded abs, whatever you want to call it, gain in personality. It's like LeBron James game 7. When you get yourself in a bar one-on-one setting, I feel like those two, well, you and I, would thrive in those situations. It worked out for you, engaged. Hopefully one day it'll work out for me. But I want to transition college football talk. CFP bracket. What's something about the bracket that you like? Because I feel like now with the whole format and stuff like that, and we knew heading into the season that it was going to be the top 4 conference champions, and the 5th would probably be the 12 seed. And I think kind of we assumed, okay, Oregon, Ohio State for the Big Ten, Georgia, Texas for the SEC. The ACC was probably going to be Clemson, Florida State, Miami. And then the Big 12 was probably going to be a Utah or so. And then the season played out the way it did. And you don't really have those attractive brands because of the transfer portal, NIL, and just kind of the turnarounds of the Arizona States of the world and Boise State getting up there. So, like, what's something I guess that you like about the bracket? Because we all knew the format was going to be this, and it's so funny how the last 2 weeks everyone's like pissed about the format when we knew heading into the season like this was going to be it.
Well, it's tough. It's like if you go to a YouTube page and you just watch like a musician, an artist, a lot of the comments in a weird way turn negative against things that like this is when music was real. Why don't they make music like this anymore? And it's natural. It's like, hey guys, we have been begging for an expanded playoff. You finally get it. And all everyone's doing, anyone that covers college football, the first thing they're inclined to do is complain, right? Which is kind of a natural human reaction. But I think if you take a step back, just enjoy it. Like how cool is this? How about the 4 home games? At Notre Dame, at Ohio State, at Texas, at Penn State. I mean, these are, I mean, you could argue Notre Dame, I mean, would be in the running as being the biggest brand of all time in college football over the course of 100 plus years. Obviously, Texas and Ohio State would be right behind them. And I listened, I lived in PA for a couple years. Penn State's a pretty big deal. I mean, so those 4 home games are badass. Now, I don't want to be complain guy, but could you argue that like maybe we shouldn't really have buys? Look at the NCAA tournament for basketball. Look at even football. Like they got rid of a bye, and now there's only one. Like kind of everyone plays. How cool would it be if everyone was playing? Right. And now maybe it's difficult with the television window. You only got so much space. You wouldn't want games overlapping, right? You wouldn't want 2 teams playing at the same time on that Saturday. Maybe you could just go all in on Friday, but it's hard. I mean, Friday into, a week. What day is today? Tuesday. So like 10 days from now, that is technically a work day. So you couldn't just play in the afternoon like they're putting it at night. But I maybe they should just get away with the buys, or maybe just have 2 buys or something. But I hear you. Everyone's so negative. Like this is cool. Like you can nitpick absolutely anything. This is the first year of, like, if you just went to the first year of anything that was ever successful, the NFL, the Major League Baseball, Amazon, Apple, like you're gonna hit some roadblocks as long as, and everyone's acknowledging like they're gonna change. One thing I didn't know, the committee. Remember, it used to be at the BCS, like you were on the committee for like a couple years. So I heard someone say that they change it over like on a yearly basis. If that's the case, you get new ideas. I think that would be pretty healthy, but that also could you could get like crazy changes. Yeah. Overall takeaway is I think that those home games with those brands and those teams. I mean, you're gonna get some really cold games. What's Notre Dame going to be at night?
Oof, -4, I think I saw the low that night. The high is 2 degrees. But to your point about the committee, if we do have that committee, for the love of God, can we please give them a better television setup? Like, did that whole setup? I mean, what would you be like in that setup for the college football playoff committee, watching those games with the big screen TV, and it looked like a monitor on the left side?
I get that these guys are at the JW Marriott or whatever meeting for this final day. You can't tell me they couldn't have gone down to Costco and bought like 4 80-inch TVs. These guys are all multimillionaires. They're all athletic directors, former coaches, whatever. That was, plus they're old. Like I know for me personally, if you put me 20, 30 feet back, there were several TVs that look like under 40 inches. It would be hard to see. I mean, just a basic, like when you're watching a game, like if you go to DraftKings Sportsbook here in Scottsdale, there are massive televisions, right? So if you look, you can see everything. You can't tell me that everyone in that room had a good vision if you assume like the ACC game was on the smaller TVs and the Big Ten game was on the big TV for the night game. Like, how is like the dude that's like 68 years old seeing that?
Yeah, yeah.
TVs aren't even that expensive in this world where everything inflation. TVs are the one thing that like you go to Costco right now and find like I don't know an LG TV that's like 75 or 80 inches for $800.
It was just Black Friday too. So why not go out and get yourself a $300 TV? I don't know, but I want to turn the pages a little bit. The number one team in the country, the Oregon Ducks. I feel like even though Dillon Gabriel, he's a Heisman finalist, he's getting some attention in terms of him and an NFL draft perspective. I feel like he's not getting talked about a bunch. Where this is a guy that's played 5, 6 years in college. He went to UCF, transferred to Oklahoma, then goes on to Oregon, where Cam Ward, on the other fact, he's having a hell of a season too. This is another 6-year senior that went from Incarnate Word, made his way to Wazoo, then made his way to Miami. But I ask you as a former scout, like when you watch Dillon Gabriel, because Drew Allar got a lot of attention in that game, deservingly so in the Big Ten championship. But it felt like Dillon Gabriel made every single type of throw in that football game to keep them alive and keep them from losing that Big Ten championship.
Well, two things can be true. You can be an awesome player in college and not be a great NFL prospect. Like it's not even debatable who the better quarterback prospect in the NFL is in that game, and it's the guy that's not that accurate. Well, why? He's 6 foot. I don't know what his exact measurements. What would you guess? 6'6", 235. I mean, he's huge. He's got a massive arm, but he's inaccurate. But you go that, when Myles Garrett's chasing you around, Dillon Gabriel's really small. I think depending on who you talk to, guys that have been at practice, he's just not very big. That game, he was elite in that game. I mean, he was slinging it around. Tua's a pretty polarizing player now in the pros, partly because they gave him a huge contract. But Tua in college could sling that pill, right? And I thought that guy looked like, and part of it's the lefty, so they kind of was slinging it around like Tua at Alabama. He was sweet, and he was getting peppered because the one thing Penn State has is NFL D linemen, and they were hitting him, and he'd get back up. But when you are, I mean, probably under 5'11", and I think most people would guess under 200 pounds, it's hard to take. And he's not like some superior athlete. Like Kyler is, Deion Sanders level athlete. Russell Wilson short. Russell Wilson 225 pounds coming out of college and built like a little truck. Dillon Gabriel's small, but he can really play. And he's been playing. Where did he start? UCF to Oklahoma.
Yeah, started UCF. Yeah.
I mean, he's just a really good player. Is he going to get? I don't think he gets drafted. He's just too tiny. And one thing I think there's been a shift. Listen, like everything's cyclical. I think in life, like in sports, they went all in on small quarterbacks for a while. I think we've pivoted back the other way a little bit of just, Drew Allar. To Drew, as crazy as it sounds, like Drew Allar could go in like the top 10. I actually Drew Allar's grown on me. Inaccurate, but like Josh Allen went 7th, and he was really inaccurate. Drew Allar's more accurate than him in college.
That was one thing when you watched that Big Ten game, and I know Penn State lost, but I felt like watching that football game, the way their offense was moving the ball down the field, I mean, scoring 37 points. The biggest knock on them was they haven't really thrown the football. They didn't throw the football much against Ohio State. I almost came back from that game seeing their path to the playoff. Like, if Penn State, if they trust Drew Allar the way he was, that throw he had, that 4th and 10 throw, I mean, elite status there.
Where the guy was ripping his shirt.
Yeah, gripping his jersey, throws it, and I think it was Evans on the reception there.
That was sick. That was
what's your take on Penn State after that game? I mean, heading into a short week, being unprepared to be in the Big Ten championship, scoring 37 points, and they've got the easiest path to the semifinals.
Well, to me, what jumped out, people that follow the program closer have been critical of their wide receivers not being good enough to like win the Natty. And you watch like Oregon's wide receivers are pretty good. I mean, Bo Nix's dude is sweet, right? Tez and was it Franklin, the other guy? They make plays. They just feel like
Stewart. Yeah.
They got more speed. Or Ferguson, they have another guy that's pretty sweet. To me, those two running backs for Penn State are ballers. 10, Singleton, and 13. And obviously Warren is more than likely going to be the first tight end off the board. So you go, they got a quarterback. I don't know exactly where he's going to get drafted. I say top. I mean, he could easily go like top 50 pick, right? Top 50 pick at quarterback. They have the best tight end currently in the country. Now it's all relative to your class. Like he's not Brock Bowers or whatever, but he's just huge. He's got great ball skills. He's really good. And then they got two sweet running backs. And that was like their defense. What the hell was that? Because if I would have told you at the beginning of the week, Penn State's going to score 37 points, you're like, what's the spread? How much money can I put on this game? You would have thought they would have won by 10 plus points. And the reality is they were playing catch-up the whole game. And maybe it's just, their DBs kind of got smoked throughout the game. Now, part of it was how many quarterbacks are as good as Dillon Gabriel? I mean, that guy was playing like an NFL quarterback in that game. So it's like, well, Ewers, John Stockton Jr., just go around the quarterbacks that you're going to have to play. It's like SMU's quarterback's pretty good. You'd say the one thing, Klubnik has kind of turned it on. He's had a really good second. Like he's playing pretty high level. But some of the best teams, not named Oregon, you would say their weakness is quarterback play. Texas definitely. Georgia's, I haven't seen when we're recording this. It's not like the NFL. So breaking news with quarterback injuries, like Kirby's going to keep that quiet. He doesn't have to announce anything. I think it's fair to take an educated guess going, yeah, he could be easily out for the year, right? With the Brock Purdy injury. But is that big a deal? You would say if that happened to Dillon Gabriel, that'd be a problem. It's like, I don't know. I've watched Carson Beck. Like, there's no guarantee to win the championship with him. Now, I don't know if John Stockton Jr. is any good, but I don't know. I just think
Stockton Jr.
That's where if I'm Penn State, I actually feel pretty good about my quarterback relative to the 12-team playoff, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, too, like the whole playoff as a whole, you look at some of these quarterbacks, it's like Dillon Gabriel is the one that you would trust. And then it's like, who's that second quarterback in the playoff that you could trust that can consistently get you to the national championship? Because you talk about it. I mean, Gunner Stockton, he's coming in, hasn't really had that experience in the limelight for Georgia. I don't know. Will Howard, Nico, Klubnik, Ewers, Leonard. I mean, a lot of those guys have been turnover prone at the same time.
Well, like ASU's kid looks pretty good, but is their team good enough, right? And, Boise's quarterback's been a little, depending on what game you watch, it's like he kind of feels like a Mountain West runaround quarterback. And let's face it, I would say both those two programs are just built on one guy. And it's how can they beat, a team in theory, like a powerhouse team that's just going to be like, we're going to put 10 guys in the box. This guy's running under 50 yards. Like, we don't believe you can beat us. And ASU just lost their best wide receiver, like before the Big 12 championship game. So that's where you watch Penn State and you go, I think they could make some noise in this tournament. Is that what the brackets?
Yeah.
It's
funny.
Like, would it shock you, especially with their path? They definitely could be in the semifinals.
Oh no! And I was actually looking odds right now, according to DraftKings. They've look-ahead odds. If let's say Notre Dame beats Indiana, they were to play Georgia. They're actually a 2.5-point favorite against Georgia in that second round, which doesn't mean anything sitting back. But I was pretty shocked that Notre Dame would be favored in that football game. Then you think about what Georgia can do after that.
The NFL season is rolling along, and the contenders are separating from the pack. The one thing that hasn't changed this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And it's the number one place to bet touchdowns. Long bombs, fades to the end zone, big runs, you name it. We do not care how you get them. We just want to bet touchdowns at DraftKings, and it's the best place to do it. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your first pick. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance on their own. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets. If your bet wins, just bet $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
My question to you is, because Penn State, Georgia, most likely going to happen in the semifinals. Can Georgia win a national championship with Gunner Stockton, aka John Stockton Jr., as their quarterback?
I don't know. I would say I think it's fair to watch Georgia this year. They didn't look as good as they did the first Texas game and this Texas game, right? That they don't feel like a national championship team to me. Now, winning that game and getting the bye, can they just win a couple games and all of a sudden be in it? They still are going to have as much talent, but something feels off. It's like Bam all year long. Something just felt a little off. That's what this Georgia, because again, we're holding him to like such high standards that I would be shocked if they won a championship. And honestly, the difference between Gunner and Carson, I think coaches, get so caught up of like, this guy knows the scheme. He knows what we want. He knows the plays. It's like, he's kind of held you back at times. Same thing with Quinn Ewers. Like, I bet Sark really likes Quinn Ewers. Knows all the audibles, knows all the checks, right? He just can control the huddle. It's like, well, he can't move around really. It's like he's not making any plays for you. And I think that's where coaches, it's like in the NFL where coaches in front offices sometimes butt heads. That's where Gunner, can he pass it well enough? I don't know, but he at least gives them like a huge running element that maybe that helps them out a little bit. And again, it's the other thing. It's like, who's this guy? Well, he's at Georgia as their backup quarterback. So I would imagine he's pretty good relative to the rest of the quarterbacks in the country. Like if Gunner Stockton had hit the transfer portal before the season or like in, the spring, I would imagine the teams that would have been interested would have been a pretty solid list of squads.
Oh, 100%. I mean, him coming in, I guess the one thing that benefits Georgia is they don't play until January 1st. So if you do have Gunner Stockton in, having that much time practicing, I did like, though, his ability to run that 3rd and 1 where I think he nailed one of the Texas defenders on the Georgia sideline. Everyone's going crazy. But I think the one thing, too, that benefits Georgia in that game, at least, and I texted you this, too, was Trevor Etienne playing in that game. It came down to a game-time decision. Him alongside their kicker, I cannot believe, scored all 52 points against Texas. That's incredible.
That's wild.
That's and then
wild.
Yeah,
they're clearly that's just a bad matchup for Texas. We're gonna find out like how good Texas is. Maybe they are just good, and against other teams they look normal. I think that Clemson game could be weird though. I know everyone in Dabo is never gonna shut up now. Like everyone thinks we suck. Blah, blah. It's like, okay, Dabo, we get it, but they are going to have really good players. I mean, that's the one thing, and their quarterback who was really crappy, early in the season, has like you just watch him. I would say the second half of the season, he looks like a real player. As the guy that they kind of put all their chips in the middle of the table on. Like huge recruit. I think he's from Texas, right? And he was slinging that ball in that ACC championship game. Like he can sling it and he can move. He's grown on me. I would say two guys like Klubnik I was out on. And Allar, I would say, I was just like, I thought the overhype. And then I watched him in those two games. Like, okay, well, yeah. Again, relative to the crop, not bad. It's not like these guys are going up against Joe Burrow and Mahomes.
Yeah, you look at Ewers when they can't run the football, and you look at Klubnik when they can't run the football. And Klubnik from that game 1 against Georgia to now it's like Clemson's offense is centered around Klubnik. And now you got freshman wide receivers. They got Brian Wesco, who's a part of that freshman wide receiver class that's absolutely loaded. But you talk about Texas, how much longer until Sark's got to pull the plug with Quinn Ewers? Is it the first round where he sees something, or do you think it's pretty much Quinn Ewers and then Arch Manning is on the back burner? Like, kind of talk about, I guess, the Texas quarterback situation, Quinn Ewers versus Arch Manning.
It does feel like he's going down with the ship this year with Quinn, doesn't it? Because he's
so talented defensively. It's like, do you waste that waiting on a guy like Ewers and just praying that his ankle gets better? And that
I'm not saying he won't make a change in a game. Like if it's 10-10 in the third quarter and Ewers, like the first game, right? They're just playing, it's 10-10. And it feels like Klubnik's outplaying them and like they are going to lose this game. Like I could see him going to the bullpen. I don't think he'll hesitate doing that in a spot. And they've already been playing Arch down the stretch on running plays. Right? I mean, he basically, it's going to sound like a shot. It's not trying to be like kind of a Tebow version packages. Remember early on in Tebow's career, that's how he got on the field. I think his freshman year with Chris Leak. it's a little like that with Arch. Like they're running like quarterback sweeps, like he's scoring touchdowns. I think they're going to bring him in more. People have alluded to like the game day guys that have spent time around Sark. I heard Stanford Steve say this, like they got packages and they plan on it. It just maybe the game doesn't play out that way, but I could see him going to the pen. Like I don't think they're a lock to like. Do you feel great about them in that game against Clemson?
No.
I do not. I do not. And I think if Ewers, if Klubnik's going to like they have an advantage at quarterback. And unless Dabo gets a lot of shit like no transfer portal, and obviously Sark and Ohio State and all the big boys have been very active. They're just picking the cream of the crop, right? We just need 3 guys. We'll get this guy. Dabo hasn't touched it, but he does recruit really well high school players. And it's like they got some dudes. Like you'll watch a guy score a touchdown for like that number 12 is like breaking tackles in the open field. You're like, Jesus, who is this? It's like, well, yeah, he's a top 5 high school recruiter every single year. And if the quarterback plays well, defensively, they're always going to have guys. I think that spot, like Quinn gets tight, that building could get a little tight. Sark's come a long way, but check his resume. Not exactly like some big game slayer. Yeah, they're getting a lot of respect in this game as a massive favorite. It's one that I've already kind of been thinking, like, do you take Clemson? But at the same time, like I watch Clemson play like shit in some games, so you're not that confident in them. And I think we talked about this last week, the location of the games, and that was a huge advantage for Clemson. But Clemson showed up to kick ass to take names in that game. Like they were ready. And that's the one thing with Dabo. He's been in a lot of big games, and his teams are usually pretty ready for these things.
How about him smiling ear to ear after have his freshman kicker make the game-winning 56-yarder? They said on the broadcast, greatest kicking recruit in American history, I think is what Sean McDonough said. So I guess his no transfer thing is working out moving forward. But besides that, is there any other intriguing first-round matchups, just early preview that catch your eye for the college football playoff?
Well, did you watch when they broke out the bracket on Sunday?
Yeah, it took like 15 minutes to get it out there. Yeah.
It took forever, which I mean, it's just classic, like the bracket reveal takes forever. But when they went to Herb Street and they announced Ohio State, Tennessee's like, I wonder if Ohio State, if they could pick, would rather go on the road because if all of a sudden it's 7-0 at the end of the first quarter, Tennessee, that place is going to be booing them. They're already pretty pissed off. It's not like they got to shake off the game and play in the conference championship game. So the lasting taste in everyone's mouth, which I would imagine a lot of people that will be attending the Tennessee game were also at the Michigan game. Obviously, Ryan Day is not exactly, held to high esteem right now around that place. And it's pretty clear like he's probably coming back too. So, you're kind of stuck with him. I think people are going to be pissed off. And that feels like a rough matchup. They got great defensive line. Their offensive line's in shambles. How did Michigan just beat them? Dominant up front. So now, and the difference is, I guess Michigan in theory has a really good defensive backfield too, but Will Johnson was hurt. Like Tennessee has got SEC players on the back. Like they're going to have real defense beside the defensive line. That place can get weird, and that place can get weird fast. I think that's, like at the end of the day, Notre Dame, Indiana, it is kind of David versus Goliath. And even if Indiana won, it'd be one of the great stories of all time, but no one would be like fire Marcus Freeman or whatever. You look at Penn State, people would be pretty pissed. There's going to be, James got to win that game. Sark was just in the playoffs last year, just was in the SEC championship game. Like clearly they're going in the right direction. He's got Arch in the pen. The pressure on Ryan Day to win this game at home. That if you
prime
lose,
time night game too,
it just could get so negative. I mean, my guess is 15 plus million people are going to be watching. Like it's going to be so many people watching. It's going to be so cold. So part of like their passing attack is, I would imagine Columbus a little warmer than South Bend, but let's just pick a number. Let's say it's 22 degrees. You're probably not passing for 280 yards in freezing cold temperatures. So it's like, can they run the ball? And what if Tennessee can't? Doesn't Tennessee have a stud running back?
Yeah, Dylan Sampson's one of the best running backs in the country. They could do something like they did against Oklahoma, where Nico threw the ball
the game
20 times, third down, just throw it to kind of keep the drive going. They just handed the ball.
Play like Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think they'll just copy the Michigan game plan? Just going to ugly it up. Let's get in a fist fight. We think we're tougher than you.
Why would you not? I mean, yeah, you're right. It worked. It worked against Michigan.
I would
we
say
got more talent up front.
Of all the teams in this first round, I think Tennessee would be the last team Ohio State would pick to play because they would have no problem playing Penn State. They play them every year and beat them. They would definitely take their chances with Notre Dame. They're the better version of Notre Dame, they would think. Obviously, the Clemsons, maybe Texas has the talent, same type. Texas.
They already beat Indiana.
Yeah, they would. Oh, Indiana might be their first pick. I think Tennessee might not be the last pick, but it would be the last couple picks they would want to play. Now, the one benefit, I actually heard someone say this, getting married in Nashville. The one thing with Tennessee, it's actually a little colder than a lot of the southern places. Like it would be hard for the University of Miami or Florida in an alternate universe if they had made the playoff to go to Ohio State or Notre Dame. We see it with the university or the Dolphins when they play cold, they lose. Tennessee and that's cold. Like Nashville right now is cold. Knoxville's cold. It's not like, some of these places in Florida or Bama or, deep South, it's a little warmer. That's not the case with Tennessee. So it's not like they're going to be, totally thrown off by freezing cold. Like maybe, if Miami had made the dance, it was Miami.
Speaking of Miami, Heisman Trophy ceremony this Saturday. The finalists were announced: Cam Ward, Dillon Gabriel, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty. I'll ask it straight up. If you had a vote in the Heisman race, who are you voting for this weekend?
I'd just give it to Travis Hunter. This is a year you just give it to the best player. I think what he did was so extraordinary, it's not even debatable. And their team was good. I think if Colorado had been like 6-6 relative to what they'd been, you'd be like, great improvement. They went 9-3. And he plays like 120 plays a game. We are never seeing that again. Ever. It's an outlier. And we might stop seeing it with him when he gets to the NFL because these teams are going to be like, yeah, we can't do this. You're going to get hurt. It's pretty remarkable. I think just based on the snaps alone, they don't throw to his side on defense. And on offense, he dominated. So I have no problem giving it to him. Listen, the Boise running back. Do you know if the playoffs count for your season stats?
I don't think so. I don't think they ever have.
Okay.
For the Barry Sanders record. Is that what you're talking about?
That's regular season.
Yeah, I would think it'd be regular season. And I think maybe includes conference championship, but I would be shocked if it included the playoff.
Like, can you get the Heisman? Can you get the Heisman Trophy at Boise State? I'd argue like if he ran for 3,000 yards or something, I'd be like, okay, this is crazy. You're playing San Diego State, New Mexico, and Nevada. Like, he's an awesome player. He's going to be a good player in the NFL. If he had played at Boise and they had been in the SEC, like, he doesn't have this many yards. That's why it's going to be fascinating. How many yards does he get? Who's their bracket? Penn State?
They've got Penn State, SMU.
And I think SMU is like one of the better run defenses in college football too. So that's a big moment for him, which is cool. Like, to me, Cam Ward, once they fell apart, not his fault. The defense sucked. He was out of it. And who'd you say the fourth guy was? Oh, Dillon Gabriel.
Dillon Gabriel. Yeah.
Felt like he was never really in the mix. He's just kind of like the token.
The number one quarterback.
Yeah. Best team. You get to come. I think it was a pretty big moment for Jeanty because if he does like play Penn State and they beat him and he goes for 2 bills, you're like, maybe. But if he goes for like, 60 yards and they lose by 20 points, people will be like, glad Travis Hunter got it. I'd vote Travis Hunter today. But I'd also have no problem in voting for it at the end of everything.
Yeah, I just hate the argument when they say, oh, snaps aren't a stat. But it's like we've never seen a guy. I saw someone told me yesterday, a bunch of people on just social media and stuff like that. Nothing too relevant, but they're like, well, he's not even the best in each position. It's like, okay, well, yeah, if he's not the best wide receiver, he's second, third DB. Like that itself is pretty ridiculous to be a top three at both positions.
Let's even be conservative. How many people in the history of football, of college football, have been true top 15 picks at an offensive position and a defensive position. It's probably never really happened. Dion probably could have been if he just would have focused on wide receiver. I had a buddy. I guess he wasn't a buddy. He actually hated me. I hated him too. But this guy that worked in the NFL that described Michael Vick pretty well. He's like, he's probably one of the only players I've ever scouted that legitimately could have started in the NFL like 6 or 7 different positions. Quarterback, running back, slot receiver. He could have bulked up and played like a hybrid linebacker safety. He could have gotten skinnier and played corner. It's like that's where Travis Hunter's what he did was pretty freaking remarkable. In a conference too that throws the ball around a lot. So he's running around.
I think what's more
I think Travis Hunter, the story, the production, the stat, of the snaps, everyone in football is blown away by that, right? It's like he plays how many snaps? It's like this. I remember early on in the season, like this cannot keep going like this, especially as they were good. And it's like just kept going, kept going, kept going, kept going. And every time you see him talking, like, is this guy even tired? It's crazy.
I feel like he makes a different play every single game too. I mean, that hit he had against Baylor that won them that football game. Or you talk about the big catches that he had with Colorado. But I think the more important award that not get it as much hyped, I guess, as the Heisman Trophy is the National Coach of the Year. Some of these nominees, I don't know who they're going to give it to. Shane Beamer from South Carolina, Kurt Cignetti from Indiana, Spencer Danielson from Boise State, Kennedy Dillingham, Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame, Dan Lanning, Rhett Lashley. They can go on and on and on. Monken, Kirby Smart's in the conversation too. When you look at a coach of the year, is it based on turnaround or is it based off of success? And I guess who would you lean towards to getting that award?
Yeah, to me, it has to be Cignetti just because Indiana's such a joke. I would put Dillingham probably at 2 because like Boise State's, I pulled up their like win loss reference page. Since 99, they're basically averaging 10 plus wins a year. And they have countless like 12 and 13 win seasons. Like that you win at that pro. If you lose, you suck. Who was the other name you brought up? Oh, Marcus Freeman. Like Notre Dame's been sweet since Brian Kelly showed back up. And he's doing a good job. And they're just good again. After it got a little rocky when you guys lost to Marshall and almost lost to Cal. And I thought, like, is this guy going to make his first season? Remember, it was really rocky early on. Was there a field goal block? Remember, Cal should have beat you guys.
Yeah, I think it was Cal. I want to say it was some Pac-12 team early.
They either had a field goal block.
Was
yeah, but then Cal almost beat them the next week, and it was like this is a disaster. It's why this year when he lost, obviously it's one of the worst losses in the history of the program in a vacuum. But the overall body of work is fine. But he's good, like he's winning. But everyone with their just a decent coach there is successful. So I think Cignetti, who did you see his comment? Like, we should get a home game. Or it's like, shut up, man. Just be quiet. But he has Indiana in the playoff. Like, of all the teams, if you just look at that, like Indiana being in the playoffs, and I would say ASU being in the playoffs, is one of the most remarkable stories. Like, we're not going to see that. Like, next year, Indiana and ASU, I think we feel confident saying probably won't be in the 12-team playoff in 2025.
Well, I saw Indiana actually. They raised $13 million for next season in NIL, which is what I thought was pretty crazy. The remarkable there, and it's like Indiana, Arizona State are both the same, where you haven't seen them have any success the last 2 or 3 years. I don't mind the NIL collectors, boosters not giving in any money because they haven't really seen the product on the field. Now you're seeing it. Arizona State here locally, like I heard, I talked to a booster or know someone that has a booster from Arizona State. They're already collecting $3 million, $5 million already for next season, trying to keep guys around too. And then for Indiana to get $13 million, it's crazy how you have one successful season, you've seen them do it, and people are starting to buy in.
But the key is, like the top programs, they can be down and they still get the money flowing. If Arizona State the next 2 years, Kenny Dillingham seems like a great guy, an awesome story. He can't go like 6-6, 6-6 back years and get the money flowing. Like he's got to just maintain 9-10 wins really for the next couple years to keep that money flowing. And the difference is like Indiana, like you said, I'm sure got a ton of money flowing in. It's going to be very difficult their path every year because they're just going to a lot of times play Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon. SC shouldn't suck this bad, and then just the random Wisconsin's, Minnesota's like. The chances of them winning double-digit games next year, I would bet against. Where Arizona State, like if he just parlays it, gets some players, it's actually pretty open in the Big 12. I mean, Colorado, I know he's getting some sweet recruits, but losing Travis Hunter and Shador is a problem. I mean, you're having two guys go in the top 5, 10 in the draft. Oklahoma State's in shambles. Kansas is going to lose a lot of guys to the draft. K-State, just their program's basically the same every year. So I actually think it's more sustainable at ASU if they do just keep recruiting pretty well. It's harder for Indiana.
Speaking of a program that wants to get up to those schools like Indiana and Arizona State, I mean, we got to talk about what's going on with Bill Belichick in North Carolina. I mean, I saw on the Pat McAfee show, they had the conversation. If he gets hired, he's got a whole basically Bible, 400-page Bible of what he wants with nutrition, with training, with the players he wants to bring in to make an NFL program. He had a 5-hour meeting with North Carolina. How legit is this, and could this work?
I think I don't know if you someone forwarded me the 400-page Bible. Maybe it was in the 3 and Out chat, and it was Bible. You realize why so many NFL teams in like team presidents and stuff are going to be turned off by that, because one, he comes in, he immediately just does everything his way, because how could you say no to like, hey, you guys want to win? I just did it for 20 years. I need all this, or this is what works. Or if you're North Carolina, it's like, let's face it, they're really, really desperate. They really are. Because if they just get Coach X, like their version of Kenny Dillingham or Kirk Cignetti or whatever, the likelihood that that guy wins there is not high. Not because that guy's not a good coach. It's just difficult. Most guys aren't that competitive there. You're at a huge advantage in that conference, right? Miami, I know Florida State sucked this year, but I would imagine they're going to be way better next year. I mean, just those two programs alone. So you got Miami and Florida State, which are kind of the cream of the crop. And NC State, like all the schools that you kick ass in basketball, like they're just better than you pretty consistently in football. Like NC State's just a better over the course of a decade football program. Duke, I mean, is under Elko is solid. Like they just they're not a pushover. Boston College, they went 7-5 this year with Bill fucking O'Brien. So I said this, like, a lot of people around football, it's kind of been reported. I don't know how this guy, Ollie guy, who's like turned into Schefter on Belichick, keeps tweeting out things, that a huge part is he wants his son to coach for him. And like, I kind of get it, because Bill Belichick's got $100 million, I'm sure, in the bank. He's accomplished everything humanly possible in the sport of football. And it's like, in his mind, now it's about like setting his son Steve up. Like and the only place where he truly can get that leverage, like, if Texas was open or Ohio State fired Ryan Day, I don't think Ohio State would agree to that. Do you agree? Even if they wanted Belichick. Like if I was Ohio State, I would fire Ryan Day to hire Belichick because it'd be worth it. Like, why not? We already got the players. But under no circumstances would they agree to give Steve Belichick the job. So if that is truly a point, and listen, this is all being reported, I would say, is Bill really like that? I just think anyone who ever has met a parent, they usually just, it's clearly Bill believes in his son, right? That it's very believable. But North Carolina is like right at the fringe of being an interesting enough job I could probably win that would also agree to that. Any good program, I just don't think would.
I just kind of just laugh at this because, I mean, what kind of press conferences would you expect from Bill Belichick for college football after having this year of kind of branching out, showing more of his personality, whether it's inside the NFL or McAfee or the Manning brothers? Like, I could just see him having we're on to Cincinnati when it's just a bunch of college student journalists and a bunch of players. You think he'll just NFL,
be because in the NFL, relaxed? It's much more like the injury report comes up a lot that you have to put down. In college, it's a little different. I think it's only one injury report at the end of the week. Schematically, I just think you can talk about football a little differently as a college coach than you can in like the NFL. I just think their press conferences are pretty different. And I'm not saying Bill would be like Mr. Gregarious, but I think he could balance being a little more like the guy we've seen than the guy in New England. Because a huge thing in pro football, it's just all about chess game, me versus you, chess game, me versus you. I can't give college, like, if Bill's accepting this job, he thinks within 12 months I can get a team that's like can compete for the playoffs. So if I got better players than you, I mean, Ohio State is a good example. No, let's say Clemson. Clemson, what? If they play 12 regular season games, at most, three of them are somewhat equal, and they're at a disadvantage maybe in one non-conference game against Georgia. Even the games they lose, they have better personnel. Now it's football. You got to play the game. But it's just in the NFL, the margins are so slim. Anyone can lose to anyone. In college, what's your team's going to know? It's like, we're going to beat the shit out of these guys. Now, that's always been a Bill thing. Like in some of his big Patriot seasons where they'd be like 20-point favorites against Miami and he'd start like blowing their kicking unit. So he's kind of natural at that. But I wonder if he goes, I'm not going to get hired in the NFL or it's like a 50-50 proposition. And I do wonder if North Carolina agrees that Steve can be the coach in waiting. Which how often does that? Remember, was that you were probably young, but like Muschamp at Texas, it's been said before, and it rarely ever plays itself out that way.
I mean, this could be an opportunity too where he could coach alongside. He coaches football. His 24-year-old girlfriend could coach cheer. I mean, I think it'd be a pretty cool love story in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Love knows, but she would. The problem for that, if you're her, I don't think you want him on a college campus because
Oh,
then he could dump her and upgrade. Where if you get him in an NFL building, and one thing the Patriots were always famous for is no women in terms of like their secretaries and stuff. It was all men. Like that was a big Patriot thing. Like in the Eagles, we had like women secretaries and stuff. But Bill was just no distractions, which is ironic because you get him outside the building, he's like chasing everything and getting caught up with 24-year-olds. I think Bill on a college campus, there have been some famous coaches. I'm not going to throw any names out there that, rumors were they dated some co-eds and, had separate houses on the beach and they were happily married, quote unquote. So Bill could be a menace. Can you imagine Bill and Steve running the town at Chapel Hill?
oh my gosh. Just
If I was a kid on North Carolina and I was a decent player, it'd be really difficult, but it'd be the best thing that ever happens to you if Bill Belichick accepts the job.
like, how would Bill Belichick be as a recruiter? You think he'd go more towards high school recruiting? You think he'd go more towards the portal? I mean, him having the pitch of, hey, I was the greatest coach of all time in the NFL, and I can turn you into an NFL player, but it's going to be hard. Like you saw Bill O'Brien basically kick out his starting quarterback. Castellanos is in the portal now because those two got at it. He didn't like the coaching, I guess, from Bill O'Brien and got his ass out of there. So, what type of recruiter do you think that Belichick could be?
I saw Albert Breer said, "Do you know how many homes that Dion?" And this almost didn't even sound real, but I mean, just coming from him, and he knows how many homes and living rooms Deion Sanders has sat in the last 2 years. Do you know the answer?
Um,
Well, what's your guess?
100.
He claims zero. The day and age of like sitting in people's homes, I think has changed dramatically, and they've changed the recruiting. When I was at Fresno State, you had like seven or eight, guys that were legally allowed to recruit, right? Your position coaches. And even it was up to a certain number. So if you had more position coaches than the number, some of them couldn't. And then the head coach, there were rules when he was allowed to go out. Like in spring recruiting, by the time I got there, he was no longer allowed to go out. Maybe one year he was, then one year he was. Now it's like a free for all. You can send your GM can go into a living room, right? And I do wonder with Zoom and everything has changed a little bit. I think recruiting, it's not sitting there for most of these kids, especially the ones Bill and Dion are after, of like, I'm going to teach your son how to be a man. It's like, we got 750 grand. You guys want it? It's become very transactional, which is right up Bill's alley because he doesn't give a shit about what you're cooking for dinner. Nick liked that, I think, right? Nick or really embraced it. If these new rules were not in place, Bill would never even entertain this. But I think he goes, I don't have to go into living rooms. And to me, the number one thing he's asking them beside that 400-page Bible is like, what's our budget? Like, do I have $12 million to spend on guys? Because if we do, I feel pretty confident that I can allocate that money to the guys I like. And I think he would be heavy on the portal because one of his big things when he would watch draft guys, I always heard was when he was preparing for the draft, he would watch the previous year's film and watch them against guys who had been rookies in the NFL. So if I'm watching a defensive end, I will watch him against this right tackle that I know was a third round pick that started 17 games for the Bengals. It's like that's what, and I know right away, like this guy was a good rookie. And so he's very good at that. So he can go, the transfer portal will give me the top 30 guys in the transfer portal. Well, I can watch them, like, who are the best teams they play, and I can watch them play other college players. That's why I would be very adamant if I was a GM in college or I was a head coach. I'd be very, very hesitant to allocate huge, huge money toward high school kids. When you see some of these numbers these quarterbacks are getting, it's like it's pretty risky. I mean, I think that's a pretty clear why Dylan Raiola is at Nebraska, not Georgia. Because hell, that could have been Dylan Raiola come in the game instead of Stockton. But Kirby, I think they cut off their number. Like, we're not paying this for a high school kid. And also, the moment you do that, he's more highly paid than like half of Georgia's defense. And Bill was big on that. It's why he always traded out of the first round, because he never wanted to give big contracts. It's like, how could I pay a guy who will be the second highest paid guy in my locker room beside Brady? He's never even taken a snap. I actually think Bill could thrive in like the economic environment where most college coaches hate it. He'll embrace it, because if you suck, I'll just cut you.
Could you imagine going to Bill Belichick's office and asking for a pay raise if you're a college football player? I don't even think that would even be a thought to go to Bill Belichick's office unless you've proven it on the field. But I think it's crazy just now, today's, college football age. I saw Dylan Stewart, the South Carolina defensive end, got a new deal for proving that he's a good player as a freshman. That part of it to me is like the one part. It's like, man, like I don't know how I feel about guys agreeing to new deals in college football, but that's where we are right now.
But you don't have a choice, because he'd go, well, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State are offering me triple what, let's just pick a number, 500 grand. It's like, well, they're going to give me $2 million next year. That's the dude that kind of looks like Clowney meets Myles Garrett, right?
Yeah.
The pass rusher.
Yeah.
Who I remember seeing on Twitter like 6 weeks into the season, they're like, South Carolina is already trying to raise money for this to retain him, which is the fucked up part. That's the difference in the NFL. Like, you can't just call, if I have a free agent, if I'm the 49ers, the Packers can't just be working with the agent of like my starting running back or wide receiver who's going to be a free agent in the middle of the season. We're in college, that's happening constantly. And it's just, that's where I think Bill would lose his shit. Like, if you're trying to, like, he's got good players, you're trying to steal them like week 4. That's where he might not even care, right? He might just like blast people publicly. He'd be like, yeah, Lane Kiffin just called my starting pass rusher. Like, DM'd him like 17 times. He would just, where you can tell college coaches kind of beat around the bush on a lot of this. Because it's like they're all part of the same club and they know they're all kind of cheating. But, in the NFL, like, you get caught cheating, you get turned in and your team gets fined or docked a draft pick. And that's where the colleges, there's no rules. I also think with like the South Carolina kid or whoever a top player is, it's usually their, a player like his level, his agent is calling the team, calling the head coach. Probably, it's not like he's knocking on the door. I would imagine maybe some of these, because that would take some balls, even if you are a good player. Can you imagine just knocking on like Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, even Ryan Day, or, these guys be like, Coach, and maybe I'm so out of the loop. Maybe these conversations are really, it's hard when you're in business conversations talking about, they're uncomfortable conversations. So you're telling me like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid feels comfortable talking about it with the head coach or even their position coach. Some of the position coaches are bigger assholes. They'd be a little intimidated by these guys. My guess would be most of it is like them bitching to the agent, which I've been told all the top guys, they're represented by people who obviously hope that they become NFL players and they keep representing them, right? It's kind of like what happened with basketball with AAU, and then you go through like an intermediary to get your raise. Every once in a while, I saw Mike Locksley give a story that like his third string running back knocked on his door after spring ball, said, I want 200 grand or 100 grand or whatever. And Locksley was like, you're our third string running back. He's like, well, I got an offer. And Locksley was like, well, Godspeed. Great. Go get it. See ya.
Yeah. I mean, that part of it too, but I was also going to ask you too, in terms of the transfer portal, because it opened up yesterday, Monday, December 9th. It goes to the 28th. And a fun thing I did not know about is the portal opens up 5 days after your season ends. So if it's in the CFP or a bowl game or whatever, I saw Lane Kiffin talk about how Duke's quarterback's already in the portal before their bowl game. So now it's like, okay, I know Ole Miss is probably going to roll Duke but Duke's without their starting quarterback. Now you've got a couple weeks to adjust with two backups against Ole Miss. Is there any way around this where the transfer portal window can be just after the season, or is it because of the academic window you're forced to have it the 9th through the 28th and then 5 days after whenever your season ends? And then also the spring window is just a 10-day window too. Like,
when you say 5 days after, what do you mean by that?
Like, so if Texas were to get eliminated in the semis, let's say they get eliminated, but to Arizona State on the first, players on that team, if they're not hit the portal already, they have 5 days after to hit the portal, which I didn't know because I thought, like, for example, Quinn Ewers' name has been thrown out there saying, well, his draft stock's been bad. Like, could he potentially leave Texas before they even play that game so he gets another opportunity? But I saw online where he would have 5 days after to hit the portal. So I'm just like, I'm wondering your thoughts on just the portal window at all, or is it one of those things where coaches like Lane Kiffin are just going to have to adjust? Like, if your quarterback leaves before a bowl game, sorry, like, you're going to have to find someone else.
I hear what you're saying. So if I'm a player, if I'm Quinn Ewers, and let's say I decide I want to keep playing college football next year, I could enter the portal today, basically just quit on my team. Technically, I could enter the portal and like say I don't know if I'm leaving yet, and still kind of, I don't know if you're allowed to practice if you're in the portal, probably not. But you basically get 2 windows. It's like, well, I'll actually stay, but then I'll weigh my options. It's clearly out of whack. I don't have the right answer for it. I knew people that just transferred just different schools, not even athletes. And then I saw it when I was at Fresno State when guys would try to. It's very complicated, right? With credits and being able to transfer stuff, especially all these guys like the California school system, the Texas school system, the school system in Boston. It all doesn't. How does the what's it called? What are your grades? The transcripts. Does none of that matter? Because half these guys that hit the transfer portal have to have some questionable transcripts. Hell, I did my first couple years. How can they possibly just transfer wherever they want, no questions asked? Are there just no rules to get into school anymore? Because I always thought like some of these schools, like, you can't just get any. You do have to qualify, right? Maybe because they were academic qualifiers out of high school, and it's just like, I don't even care. I'm a junior, but I'm technically only a freshman academically. Maybe none of these guys even give a shit.
That's why I feel like U-Haul should be the #1 sponsor for the transfer portal. I would hate to move. I mean, TJ Finley, he's a quarterback at Western Kentucky. He's played at LSU, Auburn, Texas State, and Western Kentucky. He's got 1 more year eligibility. He's in the portal going to his 6th school already. That's unbelievable.
How could you possibly? I guess there are 2 ways to look at it. Think how many friends that guy has all around the country. Like, he knows a bunch of buddies at LSU. He knows a bunch of buddies at Western Kentucky. He knows all these different coaches. If you wanted to get into coaching, if you're a player, like, I'm not that good, I know I want to be like Ben Johnson or Kyle Shanahan one day, you would want to transfer like 3 different teams in Division I, and you would just meet so many coaches. And the likelihood that one of those coaches just turns out to be like Sark or Lane Kiffin or Kenny Dilling is pretty high. And it would just make your career. I would transfer every single year. But like, back to the academic thing. Can you imagine what the guy's transcript looks like? I mean, what does it just
changes major again, 3 times?
Yeah. I'm not Mr. Academic. I don't give a shit, but I just do the academic now side of it get no say. Like, it's like, yeah, this guy doesn't even qualify for our school, but clearly there is I haven't read one time once a guy's in college football that he transfers and gets denied because, quote unquote, his transcripts didn't carry over. It's yet to be a story I've seen. Yeah, I wonder if these guys don't even care.
You know what? We'll get you a tutor. We'll figure it out. 2.0 GPA doesn't matter. I got 2 more questions for you. Actually, yeah, I got 2 more questions for you. It's bowl season right now. I'm a big bowl guy, and it's the one thing about the 12-team playoff. It's great, but it kind of diminishes the fact of bowl games. Is there any way you can bring value to bowl games and have some type of relevancy, or is it kind of just thrown out the window?
Yeah, gambling. I think people like to gamble. I like gambling on these bowl games. I mean, typically we get bowl games starting relatively soon, right? They start
Saturday
next week. They're starting this Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah, you just get random matchups. Listen, when I was at Fresno State, we played in the New Mexico Bowl. You know when the New Mexico Bowl usually was? This Saturday. It was always one of the first games. It was cool. It's if there's a bowl game on TV, especially during the holidays, is there anything better than like a week before Christmas on like a Wednesday? There's just a game on in like the afternoon, and it's like Louisiana Tech versus Toledo. It's like I'm in watching it. And now I think the gambling aspect again, it's just television inventory. I think people make too big of a deal. Like the bowls don't matter. It's have they ever? Like has the New Mexico Bowl ever mattered? Would it have mattered in 1980 any more than it matters in 2025? Of course not. You could argue it matters now more because all these like are on ESPN or Fox. So it's cool. Like this isn't baseball or basketball. You don't get to play that many times. Most of these kids and most of these bowls are not Travis Hunter and Shador. They're not going to play in the NFL. It's a really cool thing to get to play in football games. Like you just don't get that many of them, right? I think people talk too much shit too easily about when it comes to this type of stuff. When we have to factor in like there aren't that many football games in general in a human's life, even if you're a college football player. And if you're a college football player, most guys don't start for 4 years. So let's say you're like a 1.5 year starter. How many games do you actually end up getting to play? Like 20, 25? So yeah, it's a really big deal. And I give props to Dion for saying our guys are playing. I saw someone else say, who'd I see? Like our guys are playing. I've seen a lot of coaches kind of come out. Maybe it was Kyle McCord, was Syracuse coach. Someone said that like our guys are
Yeah,
playing.
yeah. It was Fran Brown. Yeah, from Syracuse.
It
I know
was
what
like,
you're
we
talking
didn't
about.
come here to not play. Like, what do you like, almost mocking the question, which I'm a huge fan of. Like when something goes one way, the media loved it. They celebrated it like these kids have the power. It's like it's not. You guys are a little too deep on this. It's not that big a deal. Christian McCaffrey's a running back. He doesn't want to play in the bowl game against North Carolina. It's not that fucking crazy. But like, it's also not that crazy if a kid does want to play. And remember, you were probably like 6 at the time when Jalen Smith played in the bowl game.
I
And he
was at
hurt his
that
knee.
game. I was at that game actually. Yeah, I
That
was against
sucked.
Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl. Yeah, he was supposed to be like a top 5 pick. Hurts his knee really bad. Didn't get back, I don't think, that next season for the Cowboys. But to your point about the bowl games, I'm looking right now. I mean, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech. I mean, that's kind of a sneaky matchup with Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt versus a hard nosed quarterback in Haynes King. Like, if there's nothing on TV, I'm putting that on at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night.
So are a lot of people. That game, it's the other thing. That game will have more viewers than probably 98% of NBA regular season games. That game will get more viewers than every non like Dodger Yankee baseball game. Like it's a lot of people watch these games. That's why they keep existing. You know, it's like yeah, kind of weird matchup. Some if you just say Vanderbilt Georgia Tech, the first reaction is like who cares about that game? Well, 22.7 million people ended up watching it on like a Thursday night.
South Alabama, Western Michigan this
That's where
Saturday.
I draw the
Bowl
line at
game
some of
start.
those. At some of those, Matt. I need power four teams. I can
Fair
do the
enough.
occasional like Fresno State or an Appy State, in those type games, but whatever game you just witnessed or mentioned, I'm probably not going to watch.
I was going to ask you to preview it, but we'll continue. I'm kidding. My last question for you. We got to talk about it. Navy Army this Saturday. Are you going over under 38 and a half? Who do you like in that game? Army
Have
Navy.
you
Do
ever
you even
have you
watch,
ever
do
been?
you watch Army Navy? No, I've never been. Have you been?
Yeah, well, my first year in Philadelphia, the game used to be. I think it's kind of gone back and forth, like between the link where the Ravens play. They have it sometimes, I think, in MetLife, and I just got free tickets because it was at the link. And someone in the building was like, bro, I would go. It's pretty cool. I went by myself. I didn't have anyone to go with. And it's just, if you love America, like it's the pageantry before, like again, it felt like my high school teams running the wing tee. I mean, the football, it's not like you're going to see Alabama, Georgia, but someone just said, get there a couple hours early. And it's just sweet the way they all come in, the flyovers. It's just a really powerful moment. Place is packed again, then they just start at the time. I think their offenses has changed a little bit, but it was like this was 2010. It was like wing T versus the wing T triple option. Uh, but everything surrounding the game is it's just it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Uh, yeah, I mean, I've over the years thrown it on in the background out of respect for the men, out of
Yeah.
respect for my country. As a football lover, it's not my go-to. Uh, but when I was at Cal Poly, our coaching staff, I got hired at Fresno State. Like a year later, they all got hired. The head coach, Rich Ellerson, got the Army job. And I had been working with those guys for like a couple years. So I kept in contact with them when they were at Army. The difficult uh uphill battle, the players, like the stuff they have to do, it's insane. In terms of school and training, separate from football. I mean, you're like, these guys are such badasses. And anytime at the time that Andrew Villanueva was one of their players who ended up playing for the Steelers at left tackle, but it's like it's not normal college football. Like they don't get to just dick around, go home, and after practice, eat some food and go lay with three chicks. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a different world of maturity, of discipline. So I have a ton of respect just to operate in one of those programs. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and it's awesome seeing this year they've been good, right? They've just won a lot of games.
Army just won the American Athletic. I mean, they were an underdog in that football game. Tulane never seen an offense like that before. They showed out. I think it's cool to your point, like the different uniforms they have, how Nike goes all out for, I think it's Army, and then Navy goes, or Under Armour goes all out for Navy. So all in all, the pageantry of it. And it's also fun from a gambling perspective to see, will the over hit? Will the under hit? I think it's been like the last 12, 15 years or something like that. The unders hit. Did last
But
year maybe the over hit?
I feel like, don't quote me on this, but it feels like a large percentage of the last, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years, at least one of them has been really bad. Like a lot of times you look up at the game and they're like 3-9. I mean, this has to be 8-3 versus 11-1 and two. I mean, at a point in time, like Navy was viewed as one of the best offense in the league before they played you guys and got killed. But I mean, for the most part, they score on everybody. And Army's had an excellent season. Like, aren't these like powerhouse offenses? Could this actually be a shootout on the ground?
That's why I was shocked to see the over under totals at 38 and a half. Usually I feel like you see that around like 25, 28, 26.
I
But
mean, I just pulled up Navy like 49, 38, 56, 41, 34, 51. These teams usually don't score like this. Both these two teams, like you said, I had it on like a smaller TV on, was it Saturday morning when the Arizona State game was on? They were playing, they were killing them. And you look at Army, 35, 29, 49, 45, 44, 49. You'd have Belichick probably know the answer to this. It has to be two of the higher scoring offenses for these two programs in the same year in like the history, definitely in modern day history of this rivalry.
yeah, definitely. It's gonna be fun to watch. I mean, college game day goes out there, the attention, you're right, for in honor of the troops and what they do for the country. And I actually had a friend that went to Air Force and he said it was just a different world having, you mentioned school, military, football. Like imagine waking up at what is it, 3, 4 a.m., get your well, can't talk military training done, and then you go to school, and then you got football, and then you come back home. So I don't know,
Do you know
man.
where the, do you know where the game is?
It's in Maryland. It's at Northwest Stadium. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's related to Baltimore Ravens or wherever, but
Yeah, I think the Ravens one is MP Bank or whatever. Northwest Stadium. I don't even know what this is. Yeah. Yeah, it
it'll be
should be
fun.
fun. Yeah, so what we have games this week and then we do the playoff games. We'll be in touch because we got to figure out a time. Maybe we react next Saturday night or in 2 Saturdays after we have the first round of the playoffs. The only thing that pisses me off is the brackets and not reseeding because I do think the one thing that's fair to be negative on that's not a nitpick is like, wait, Oregon has to play the winner of Oregon, Tennessee.
Or
In
Ohio State,
college
Tennessee. Yeah.
or Ohio State, Tennessee. Like in college basketball, usually when you're a one seed, for the most part, you at least get an easy route the first couple of games. And sometimes to like the Elite Eight, I mean, their first game is going to be against Ohio State, which even with their issues could be one of the best teams in the country. In Tennessee, at one point in time, we thought like, is this team going to win the national championship? I saw Joe Klatt was like, they got to play two, potentially the winner of, these two of the top like 3 or 4 odds teams in the whole tournament.
But even if they did reseed it, and I mean, of course, the college football season's been chaos, and most people are saying it's going to be chalk unless you said Clemson could potentially beat Texas, not a fair matchup for Texas. They'd most likely still would play Ohio State,
True.
Tennessee.
It's true.
So I mean, Oregon, that sucks. You got to play Ohio State again, but if they don't lose to Michigan, then you end up playing a Penn State, or you play a Texas, or you play a Notre Dame. So I just feel like the 12-team bracket as a whole is going to be hard regardless. But the fact that Oregon did win the Big Ten and they've got a way harder path than Penn State, it's definitely a bad look for the first year. And part of that too has to do with Boise State getting a first round bye, and then SMU squeezing in there. Like if SMU gets blown out, does Alabama get in there too? So
that's where those two teams getting buys, like Oregon should be playing Boise State or Arizona State, right? Yeah. That's who they should be playing. And potentially they wouldn't do this for TV. Boise State and Arizona State should probably be playing in the first round against each other. Type thing.
It's only a matter of time until we're going to get to 16 teams, man. Jeez.
No, it's right around the corner. Okay, Jackson. Well, enjoy the rest of the week and fire in those DMs. You can get yourself a date. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Yeah, teach me something else. Offline and something like that. I need some DM lessons from John Middlekauff for sure. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
See you, buddy.